All right, Jeremy, hello and welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me.
So thrilled to have you here. This is an area that I don't think we talk too much about, or we need to talk more and more about it to educate people, but I'm really excited to learn myself. So I've been dying for this episode. So I'm so thrilled to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited as well.
Good. So let's jump right in. First, I'm interested to share with everybody you and your role at the firm and how you help people with financial planning.
Sure. I mean, I guess a little bit about my background. So I've been here now 18 years, which is a scary number to say. So I really started off as a financial advisor, just learning, kind of working with friends and family, because that's what you did at the time. Probably started off a little bit more transactional than I wanted to. So it really wasn't a good fit for me initially. And then transitioned to what we called at that time our case design unit, really just working on data entry on financial plans. So that's really where I got a broader scope of the industry and really got excited and passionate about financial planning. Worked my way up, got my designations and things like that. Then was overseeing the team from a financial planning perspective. So really helping clients and advisors create customized solutions to help clients achieve their goals. And now I'm really evolving my career even more and really focusing on being an advocate in the industry and coaching advisors and really helping them integrate financial planning into their practice. So it's a really exciting time. It's been a great journey.
Yes, I love that. So in your 18 years, you've always been working with clients in some sort of capacity to help them build their financial plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. You've stayed, and I've known Jeremy for those 18 years. We've kind of grew up at this firm together, and I've watched you evolve in that space. And it's been really exciting to watch.
Yeah, you got me beat by a couple of years, but
just a couple. But it's been really exciting to watch and see you grow and see the amount of clients and advisors that you are helping to build their financial future. That's really great. So congrats on all your amazing work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I want to start though with a really basic question of what is a financial plan?
Yeah, I think that's a great question and kind of the basics of what we're talking about here today. I think, and also in that definition, I'll talk about the distinction between a financial plan, a thing, and financial planning, an ongoing action, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a really important distinction. I think they get used interchangeably. Mm-hmm. So I would define a financial plan as simply a set of actions that you need to take to help you achieve your financial goals. Mm-hmm. I really look at that as a snapshot in time. Okay. Financial planning is really the ongoing process of assessing and implementing financial strategies to achieve your goals in line with your values. And I think that's a really critical piece to make sure that your goals and the things that you're trying to accomplish are aligned with what's important to you, what's meaningful to you.
Yep, I love that. And a lot of people, I would imagine, Jeremy, that you work with don't make that connection between money and their values and how their values really probably determine how they plan, how they spend their money, and really how that shapes their future.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, I think I just had a conversation with a client yesterday and we were talking, it was an introductory conversation, and really that whole meeting is around goals, what's important to you, right? Mm-hmm. And we talked about, they want to retire in a few years. They want to send their kids to college. So I started to peel that back a little bit. So tell me about sending your kids to college. What does that look like for you? Do you want to fully fund it? And then I asked them the question, if you had to prioritize delaying retirement by 3-5 years to send your kids to fully fund your children's education, which one would you prioritize? And they said, well, I would delay. But that's a very personal conversation, right? That's in line with their values. What's their priority? Yeah. And there's some people that say unlimited resources. Well, I still want my kids to have skin in the game, right? So those goals and those strategies are going to look very different for those different types of clients.
Yes, it's all about how you value your future and how you value the wealth that you're building.
Exactly right.
Jeremy, when I was prepping for this, when I was reading up, I read a lot about how only like a quarter of the American population has a plan, but even less has a written plan. Does that go back to what you were saying, that some people have maybe a plan in their head versus having a written plan, a thing, versus some people who are actually going through the ongoing motions of a plan?
Yeah, I think there's probably a spectrum there, right? It's a plan. Well, I got some ideas in my head and I think I'm doing some things to achieve those goals, right? So I think that's a little bit fuzzy. A written plan, so okay, I did one snapshot in time and I have, you're getting a little bit more defined. And then the ultimate being, okay, this is something I'm reviewing and updating on an ongoing basis as my life change, as the economy changes, as my values change, right? People's values change over time too. So we want to make sure. So I think that's kind of the progression. So I think there's definitely a spectrum there. And people kind of ebb and flow out of that spectrum as well, right? So I think, obviously, and I'm a little bit biased, right? But I think obviously keeping that engaged and updated on an ongoing basis, I think that's how you're going to have the most financial success.
And I'm excited to talk about that. I want to pivot for a second, but I want to come back to that. But can you tell us, what does a financial plan consist of? What does this thing and this action actually consist of?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. I think there's probably two components to it. I think it's what's the process that you're walking through to get to the plan, right? To get to those action items. And then I think the second component is what are the things that kind of go into that? What are the things that we're evaluating, creating strategies around? So from a process standpoint, I think it really starts with assessing your goals, like we just talked about, right? I think that's, for me, that's the most critical piece when working with clients. Like, what's important to you? What are your values? And let's dive a little bit deeper to see what that looks like. And then looking at, okay, where are you today? If you're working with an advisor, you're going to need to gather some information. So we kind of need some, basics snapshot of where you are today. So assets, your investments, your properties, whatever that is, liabilities, mortgages, student loans, your income, your expenses. What are you spending on a regular basis? What insurance policies do you have in place? Do you have estate planning documents in place? So I think kind of getting the stuff, and then doing some sort of analysis, right? So looking at, okay, you said you wanted to achieve X, you're here. Are you on track to meet those goals, or are there some sort of shortfalls? And then really starting to develop strategies to achieve those goals. And again, I always say financial planning, we live in a world of gray. There's very few things that are clear cut. You should always do this. You should never do this. So it's really about trade-offs and about preferences.
Very personal.
So a good advisor should really educate you on those trade-offs, on those preferences to really put you in the driver's seat as a client to make a smart and informed financial decision. And then it's, okay, we went through all this analysis. We went through all these potential strategies. Here's what you need to do. Here's that action plan to make sure you're on solid footing. And then, okay, what's the ongoing service to make sure that we're achieving those goals over time? So I think that's the process component. If we think about kind of the areas, what's the scope of the work that we're doing from a financial planning perspective, the terms financial position, I really think about cash flow. So what are you spending? What are you saving? What's coming into the household? Thinking about, are you being smart with your debt? So should we refinance that mortgage? Obviously, probably not now with where interest rates are now, but you never know kind of what you have from an interest rate from a mortgage perspective. Student loans, credit cards. Okay, how are we managing the debt that we have? And then looking at risk management. So really around insurances. So life insurance, disability, your auto and home coverage. Do you have umbrella policies? Like, do you have the right amount of coverage for those what ifs in life? Looking at investment planning. Are you taking the right amount of risk given your tolerance and given your time horizon? Thinking about tax planning or things that we can do. And that's always a hot button for people. People never want to pay too much for taxes, right? So, but what are some things that we can do? Not only looking at taxes today, but how do we reduce taxes over time? And then I would say lastly, estate planning. So when you're no longer here and there's assets left behind, how do you want those assets to transfer? Who do you want them to transfer to? And kind of working through those different areas.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's a lot. That's great. I don't think people realize how much you do have to think about as your life evolves.
I would add to that too. It doesn't, from a planning perspective, it's not necessarily we have to hit on every single one of those every single year, right? What's most relevant to you now? Let's make sure we hit those key areas, and then it evolves over time, right? So I'm very much focused on, let's not make this an overwhelming process, right? Some people make the analogy financial planning is like going to the dentist, and nothing against dentists. Everyone wants clean teeth, but people typically, when they think about the dentist, they don't get excited about going. So I'm very much focused how do you make the process easy for clients, engaging for clients, and making sure that we're hitting on the key areas that are most relevant for them. I think that's important.
When I sit here and I listen to that, right? You talk about goals, which I think is such an exciting thing to talk about. I don't know if I'm alone in that, but I love goal setting. I love goal planning and adding your values into that. Then you're talking about, okay, where are you today? And then where do you want to be? And figuring out strategies how to get there. I love helping with that performance gap. And then when you talk about everything a financial plan consists of, you mentioned your spending, your savings, your debt, your risk management, your investment plan, tax planning, and estate planning. To me, this makes so much sense. I'm interested to know from your perspective, why don't more people put a plan in place? I get the feeling that people are a little bit resistant to this.
Yeah, I think you can probably peel back. There's probably different areas that are a little different that create barriers to entry for clients. I mean, I think the first one, you start to think about it, it's overwhelming, right? There's just, number one, where do I start? There's so much, I'll call it noise, financial noise out there. There's just so many differing opinions. So trying to find who's the person that I should work with and where do I start? I think that's probably one of the biggest things. I think two, some people don't like to talk about their finances. I mean, sometimes it's just an uncomfortable topic. So it's thinking about, do I feel comfortable about discussing with someone? Do I feel safe talking to someone about my finances? I feel like maybe I'm doing things that I shouldn't be doing. Right. And so I think that creates a potential barrier to entry as well. And again, I think just where do you get the right information? And then how do you stick to it? Right? Mm-hmm. How do you make sure, okay, I've done this assessment. What's the ongoing commitment? What's the ongoing accountability to making sure that I'm doing those things? So I think finances are always on people's mind. Sometimes it's not the number one priority, and life gets in the way too, right? So I think there's quite a few areas that prevent people from really engaging in that process. Yeah.
One area I read was, especially now, is some clients feel like life could be so uncertain. Why bother?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a good one, right? I don't know what the future holds. So why even do this, right?
Of course.
So I think Dr. Fauci was talking about this early on the pandemic, and it's a quote that really resonated with me, but it's, all models are wrong, but some are useful. Mm-hmm. And you think about that in the context of planning, it's exactly what we do, right? I'm projecting a model 50 years out in the future. I can guarantee with 100% certainty that model is not going to be a real life, but how do we use the model to make smart financial decisions now, help evaluate some of those potential risks in your financial plan and making sure we're addressing those and then evolving it over time.
Sure. And I think half that battle is, the old saying of knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. So just helping clients with the knowledge of, do you know where you want to go? Mm-hmm. And do you know where you are today?
Right.
Do you know where every dollar is spent in your life? And are you okay with that?
Right.
And is that serving you?
Right.
So I think that provides a lot of knowledge, and that will help with maybe that uncertainty. Because at least you're certain about that.
Right.
And then you can move forward with, with whatever, how life and the markets and your goals unfold.
Right. And I think being in line, you want to live in line with your values, right? So I think, you lit up when I started talking about goals. And I think that's very, personal to me as well, is let's really dig deep. What's important to you? And you want to make sure your money is in line with what's important to you, right?
Sure.
So how do we do that over time?
Sure. Jeremy, there's something I hear very often, and a lot of people think, and it could be some of that financial noise, but a lot of people think, well, I don't have enough money for a financial plan. Mm-hmm. Or when I have X dollars, I'll put a plan in place. When I make X amount of money, when I have X net worth, I'll put a financial plan in place. What's your perspective there from 18 years working in this space?
Definitely get that from clients sometimes or potential clients is like, well, I'm not ready for it yet. And for just the 18 years of experience, I've never had a client say, well, I wish I started planning later. Like I started planning too early. Like that's right.
Great.
It just doesn't happen. Right. Yes. So I think starting somewhere and getting an assessment, again, if your life's simpler, okay, your goals and strategies might be a little bit simpler, but I think the more that you can create those strategies and implement those strategies and really get in the habit of doing those things, I think you're going to have much more financial success. So I think the earlier you can start, the better. Now, again, that might look different for different people, but I think getting in the habit of doing the assessment, really spending some time thinking about your goals and what are some basic strategies that I can do to put in place to help me achieve those goals and evolve that over time. I think they're going to be light years ahead of people who don't do that.
I love that you're right. There's probably nobody who said, oh, Jeremy, I regret doing this.
Right.
I
never.
just regret starting. It's like me with the gym. I never want to go work out, but I never feel bad afterwards.
Right. Exactly right.
So that's great. That's a great point. Jeremy, how can having a financial plan or financial planning impact your savings and impact your long-term goals?
Yeah, I think it gives you clarity, number one, and it gives you a reason why. Like, am I just throwing money into my 401k because that's what I'm supposed to do? Or no, I know by doing this, it's going to help me live the retirement that I want to live. I'm going to be able to send my kids to college. I'm going to be able to bring my kids on trips and things like that and live a worry-free retirement. Like if it's tied to a why, you're just more likely to take action on it. So I think that's the really critical piece, is just understanding the strategies, the things that you're doing from a behavioral standpoint day to day, how does that impact your long-term goals and making sure, again, you're living in line with your values? I think that's a critical piece.
Yeah. And I wonder if there's a correlation between people who have a financial plan and people who don't, if they do save more or if they are more apt to hit their financial goals over a long period of time.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could make up a stat on that right now, because I'm sure there's some financial data out there that bears that out. Sure. I mean, I would just say in practical terms, anecdotally from doing this for 18 years, certainly people that are engaged in the process and update this year over year, they're much more likely to achieve their goals. I mean, I think you start with, basic fundamentals of how do you achieve a goal? Yeah. The first one is write it down, right? Yes. And then two, do I have an accountability partner to make sure I'm actually achieving those things? So you made the analogy for the gym. I think it really resonates with planning as well. Did I write out what January 1st, what is my goal for going to the gym? And then you're much more likely, do I have a buddy, a gym buddy that's going to meet me there and hold me accountable to do those things? They're going to be much more likely to achieve those goals.
Achieve those goals. That's great. Well, speaking of buddy, let's transition to, how you work with financial advisors as well. Why should somebody work with a financial advisor to help build their plan and help with their future planning?
Yeah, I think that's a critical piece, right? I think there's two parts why an advisor would be beneficial. Number one, they have the experience. So working with the right advisor, they're going to have the experience to kind of distill the noise, right? There's so much financial noise. So how do we boil that down to things that are relevant for you and be able to assess the pros and cons of a particular strategy. And really, again, as a client, giving you the information to make a smart and informed financial decision. So I think that's a key point one. The second one being what I just mentioned, that accountability partner, right? Do you have someone in your corner advocating for you and making sure, hey, you said you wanted to do X to achieve Y. We're falling a little bit behind. Let's make sure that we pick it up so we're still on track to achieve that goal. So I think those are probably the biggest two components of why engaging a financial advisor.
Is this something that people can do on their own? Or, I mean, I know that people should work with a planner, but is it something that you really can attempt on your own?
Yeah, I think, like anything, right? I mean, I can read enough books and get enough information and start to do it, right? I think it's starting to think about, well, what information should I be looking into? What are the reliable resources that I can review to make sure I'm getting the right information?
Yeah.
And then what does that assessment look like, right? There's always some sort of analysis from a financial planning perspective. So what tools am I using to I model out 40 years in the future? I'm saving $10,000 a year. What does that mean for my retirement? So I think you need some tools. And then again, that ongoing accountability piece. But I think there's certainly components that people can do on their own.
At least in the beginning.
Yeah. And be successful doing it. I think it's a big time commitment, right?
Sure.
To be able to kind of get a whole wealth of knowledge, to be able to, again, disseminate the noise and making sure this is right for me. And then making sure that I'm, revisiting and assessing over time. I think that's important.
Well, I think what you said too, let's go back to what you said about how an advisor could help you with those trade-offs. So I think a lot of people don't love to look at trade-offs when you're talking about goals and making decisions. That's what I see a lot in my world. People do not want to think about what you have to give up, right? When you say yes to one thing, you say no to another.
Right.
When you put your money here, you can't put your money there. So there's always a trade-off. And I think that's where a financial advisor could come in to help you. I mean, I think they could come in a lot of places, but one in particular is this area to say, okay, well, just, remember it's this or that, or how this decision may impact that decision.
Exactly right. And again, I think they filter through all that. What's most relevant for you now? So I think they can just streamline that entire process for clients. Absolutely.
Yes. And it could be something that's a little lonely. I think in my world in marketing, a lot of people feel like they're the only one, right? I'm the only one that doesn't have a plan. I'm the only one who may not be saving enough. I'm the only one who's not on track for retirement. Yeah. So I think a financial advisor, has that experience to kind of give people a little sense of calm to say it's okay.
Yes.
Wherever you are now is okay. Let's just get started.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely hear that. Like, again, I think there's some shame sometimes people bring to the table as far as, well, I should have been doing this. I should have been doing this. And I can guarantee you, I've heard it all at this point and 18 years doing it. So I think, being comfortable having those conversations, I promise you are not alone. Any financial issue that you're in, that you think you're in right now, you are not the only person going through it. So I think it's just kind of understanding that and being comfortable. And I get that it's difficult, but that's where it starts. Hey, I know that I need to achieve this goal. the time starts now to start to work on achieving that and working with someone that you're comfortable with. And I think that's an important piece as well.
As you work with clients, do you find that people really do know what their goals are, or do you even have to help? Maybe they know they want to send their kids to school, but they don't know what type of school. And to your point, do you want it funded? Do you want to fully funded, or are you expecting them to take out loans? How do those kinds of conversations go?
Yeah, that most people don't have clearly defined goals. So again, first meeting, typically what I do with clients and how I teach advisors, it's really all focused around goals and understanding. Most people say, "Oh, I have the same goals as everyone else,"
yes.
right? And you start to feel that back. I'm like, no, your goals are very much customized to you.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people say, I want to retire. I want to be worry free.
Yes.
Okay, but what does that look like for you? Are you spending time with your kids and they live in different parts of the country?
Yes.
Do you want to travel the world? Do you want to take a cruise around the world? Whatever.
What
Again,
do those years look
do you
like?
want to buy a second home? You want a lake house or a house on the mountain? I mean, those are all very specific to individuals. So I definitely spend a lot of time kind of just let's peel back that onion a little bit and making sure we fully understand what's important to you. And again, that's not set in stone. That I can promise you that will evolve over time. But again, it's spending a lot of time just kind of understanding what's important to the clients now, I think is a critical piece. And then what you just mentioned, the prioritization. All right, well, we got college, we got retirement, we got that second home, we want to travel the world. Well, like you said, there's only limited resources. So how do we want to prioritize those? And if we can only achieve 2 of the 3, which ones are you picking, or are we scaling back some of the other ones? Right. Yep. So I think working through that process is incredibly powerful for clients. And again, something that we revisit and because it definitely changes over time.
I'm sure. Exciting conversations and exciting decisions, but I can really respect how it could be overwhelming. I was talking to a friend of mine who was saying she just met with her planner and she has down to the day and the year that she can retire. And she's like, and I'm loving it, but it makes me feel good. It makes me feel good to know that I am on a track. I am on a plan.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you feel engaged as far as, okay, like, all right, there's light at the end of the tunnel and I know exactly what I'm working for and why. So I think there's actually.
And every decision, every sacrifice, every time you put money into your investments account, maybe instead of going on a vacation, you're making a good decision for your future.
Right.
That's exciting. We know from, again, your first statement that a financial plan is not one and done, that it's one snapshot in time. It's one thing. So talk to us about why it needs to be renewed every year and what does that renewal process look like? What does that look like between a client and an advisor? Yeah,
like I mentioned before, I mean, I think it's your life's evolving, the economy's changing, tax laws change. We want to make sure we're updating along with you. So you really should be updating the plan. I recommend annually. I think it's just kind of a good cadence for doing that. Because again, what the idea of reviewing on an annual basis is we can catch things quicker than if we're renewing or we're updating 5 years, every 10 years, whatever it is. We can make small fine-tuning adjustments along the way rather than having to make these big drastic changes 5 years from now. So I always say, we're in Connecticut. We want to go west to California. All right, let's make sure we're going west and not north, right? That's kind of year one. And then over time, we'll kind of refine those coordinates to make sure we're going exactly where we're going. But we don't want to, hey, we hit some turbulence and we got thrown off course. And we were going north for 5 years and we didn't realize it, right? So I think kind of making sure that we're updating that, recalibrating on an annual basis, I think is how we can be most impactful for clients and how ultimately you can make sure that, again, those small tweaks along the way are easier than, I got to make this big drastic change now, right? So how do we start to change behavior and make those small tweaks? I think are important. And I think of it very in a preventative way, right? Just how you go get your annual physical. You don't wait 5 years to go to a doctor until you're feeling pain. So I think about it like that, right? Just going and seeing your financial advisor every year, just checking in, and hopefully the tweaks at that point are minor, right? Versus making major changes that may have a bigger impact on your spending or a bigger impact on how you live your daily life. Yeah, I make the analogy with getting your annual physical all the time because I think it's an important one. So again, you want to go and get your annual physical to make sure, okay, what are some tweaks? Do I need to tweak a medication? Do I need to tweak my exercise? You're not going to the doctor next year being like, well, I better get cancer this year to make it worthwhile to go to the doctor. Like that's just like ludicrous, right? So I think it's the same thing with financial planning is, again, let's just make sure we're still on track. What are the tweaks that we need to make sure that we're still on track? And hey, nothing went haywire over the past year. And I'm still on solid footing to achieve all the things that I want to achieve financially. Do you find in your experience, do most people keep up with their plans? Probably a mixed bag.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, again, a little bit biased, but I think the clients that I work with and the advisors that I work with, again, understand the importance of updating that financial planning annually. But it's, again, I mean, the industry is evolving from a financial planning perspective and kind of what, defining what planning is. So there's definitely some advisors that I meet are, it's a one and done, or it's one every 10 years. So again, I think there's some education there, and I think there's an opportunity to make sure that it's, it is revisited on an ongoing basis, because I think it is critically important to make sure it's revisited. One and done is ridiculous. Again, I think you have a model that's 50 years out in the future.
Sure.
Like that's just not, like I said before, that's just not reality. So I think it's really going back to my original statement, it's really the ongoing process that's the critical piece.
And maybe whatever ongoing means to the team, right?
Sure.
To the client, to the advisor, and to you all come up with a cadence that's appropriate at the time.
Right.
And revisit accordingly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, those might be different. All right. We don't need to revisit it quarterly.
Yes.
We can talk once a year and go through it. Right.
Yes.
So I think making it what's relevant to the client, what's relevant to the and how does that align with the advisor's practice? I think that's an important piece.
Great. Jeremy, what is one step that anybody listening now can take towards building a financial plan?
So again, I think we spent a lot of time talking about goals, but I think it's starting to flesh out exactly what it is you want to accomplish, what's important to you. And then the second step is who's going to help you along the way. Is this something that you're going to trek alone? And are you comfortable doing that, or whether the resources necessary to be able to do that? Or do you want to start to seek out help from an advisor and I recommend interviewing several advisors to see who you're comfortable with, who has the knowledge, and be able to, are they delivering the exact service that you're looking for? So I think starting to do some research as far as, what advisor could help you achieve those goals, I think is a really critical, important step.
Great. So thinking about your goals, right? Coming to the table, at least with knowing a direction that you want to go in. So thinking about those goals and what you want to accomplish, and then seeking out a partner, an accountability buddy, an advisor to help work with you to get you to that place where you want to be.
Exactly right.
That's great. Jeremy, this was absolutely amazing. I am so grateful for all the information. This was such a fun conversation, and you really taught me, and I hope everybody listening, a ton about how to get their planning on track. So thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.